Welcome to Create Your Own Reality, a show about hope, inspiration, and encouragement. A program that will feature guests and topics that may inspire you to think about what is real and how you can create miracles in your life. Your host, Badeish Lange. Thank you for joining us on Create Your Own Reality. I'm your host, Badeish Lange, and my special guest is Dr. Russell Kort of Kort Chiropractic, located in Sherwood, Oregon. And topic today is what's happening to our nation's food supply. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Badeish.
You know, I just want to tell you, I am so excited to interview you. And there's 4 reasons that I would like to tell you right up front. Okay. The first is your knowledge about health. Second is your, my experience actually, of going and experiencing your chiropractic clinic and the state of the art of your clinic. And truly, I have to tell you this, it was a godsend and a blessing because of my particular situation that I found you and your specialty. And it was also synchronistic, how it happened. The third thing is that you're one of 4 doctors in the state of Oregon that do Atlas, what's that word?
Orthogonal.
Orthogonal chiropractics. And the other one is that you have a lot of knowledge and have done some research on what's happening to our food supply in our nation. So, you know, the first question that I would like to talk to you about is to give me some understanding of your specialty in your chiropractics.
Okay. Well, my first part of my career, I was actually worked on a paramedic unit. I was an EMT and worked in emergency medicine and worked in hospitals. And then I was in a car wreck. And as a result of this car wreck, I decided that I would go into chiropractic. But I actually had my first chiropractic adjustment when I was 7 years old. And I was a ski racer. I sprained my neck. And I went to the chiropractor and had my first adjustment as a 7-year-old. And so I always knew that this is where I was going to end up. But I went the emergency route first and then have now come back full circle. And I've been a chiropractor for 12 years. I went to school in Davenport, Iowa at Palmer College of Chiropractic. And that's really where my roots and my foundation of philosophy of chiropractic were generated from. The technique that I feature in my clinic, I feature many techniques, as do many chiropractors. But the technique one of the techniques that I specialize in, that I feature in my clinic, is a technique called Atlas Orthogonal. And orthogonal means that the skull is 90 degrees perpendicular to the top bone in the neck, known as the atlas. And the atlas is perpendicular to the rest of the cervical spine, or the neck. And so what I do in my clinic is I work to straighten that top bone that the skull sits on, so that it's 90 degrees, so it's absolutely flat. And that changes so many things in people's health. And I had a personal experience in college when I was in chiropractic school where I had a 2-month migraine. And
2 months?
2 months, nonstop. I wake up in the morning with the migraine. I went through school.
Oh, that's painful.
I went to bed with the migraine, and it was literally driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my friends said, you need to try this technique. And at school, there are so many different techniques. So I went and tried this technique, and they took very, very specific x-rays. And the reason they took these specific x-rays is because they're going to adjust that bone to the nearest millimeter. And so they have to be precision x-rays. So they took the x-rays, and they adjusted my neck, and I didn't feel anything. There was no crack, no pop, just a tap. And I remember getting up and just looking at the doctor and yelling at him. I yelled at him. I said, "Hocus pocus! What a bunch of..."
Yeah, because you didn't feel anything.
Because I didn't feel anything, you know, and I was ready to hear this crack or a pop, and there was nothing. And he said to me, he goes, "You need to rest now." And so I sat in his, he had a chair, and like in my office, I have that zero gravity chair.
Yes.
And I sat in that chair and promptly fell asleep for 3 hours. And he woke me up at 7:30 at night and said, "You have to go home now. I need to go home and eat." And I can't tell you the number of times that I see that in my clinic where I adjust someone's atlas and they fall asleep. It's almost like a reset button on your nervous system. And so a couple of days, it took, the headache, when the migraine backed off, but it actually took a couple of days, and then I didn't have a migraine or a headache or any pain in my neck for 6 months.
Well, what are some of the symptoms that people might have that would relate to this axis being off?
There are many symptoms. I think, let's get back to what causes the atlas to go out of place. I don't want to take you too far from this, but probably the first trauma that you can sustain in your body is the birth process. And it's the roughest thing you'll ever go through. And when you're born, how does the doctor get the baby out? What do they grab?
Yeah.
They grab the head.
They grab the head.
And sometimes they'll twist the head and pull the head. This is a very, very delicate structure. And so many times people are misaligned at birth.
Yes.
And then they go through their life wondering, what is this normal?
Exactly.
And so many times I take care of children that have had difficult births. Oftentimes I take care of adults that had a difficult birth, were maybe born with forceps, maybe born with suction, maybe were not able to go through the birth canal, and then they had to do a C-section. They pulled them out that way. But that's the first trauma. And what can be affected by this misalignment, you need to understand where the atlas is. So you have your head. And in the bottom of your skull, there's a hole.
Right.
And that hole is called the foramen magnum. It means big hole in Latin. And the next bone...
Sorry, I just think it's funny.
You know, it's kind of funny. The skull sets on that bone. And so you have your brainstem that goes right into that bone.
Yeah.
So if that bone has been misaligned at birth, and it's twisted or it's tipped, the nerves that are going through there could have some pressure on them.
Right.
And nerves don't like pressure. In fact, the weight of a feather will affect a nerve, and the weight of a dime will kill it. They're that sensitive.
Wow.
And every nerve in your body goes through that bone. So think about that for a second.
Trust me, I've thought about it.
Every organ has a nerve that goes through that bone.
Yeah.
Every organ, every piece of skin, every hair on your body, with the exception of your head, every hair on your body has a nerve that goes through this bone. Every organ, every hair, every artery, every muscle fiber, every capillary, every vein, your entire nervous system comes out of your brain and goes through this bone. And so it takes a real specialist to know how to move that bone to the nearest millimeter. And the effects of this adjustment are profound.
I've had it, and I can tell you it's been my miracle because I was subject to vertigo. And I understand that there may be some other symptoms that people might have, like, well, we talked about the migraines, we talked about, just mentioned vertigo. Digestion. I would imagine that this could be very serious on the digestion and to key in, right?
It could affect digestion. One of the interesting things that I see, especially in getting back to kids, because I think it's easier to fix a kid than to try and repair an adult.
Yeah.
You know? But in kids, ADD, ADHD, allergies, poor behavior.
Yes.
I have children that come into the clinic and their parents are like, please,
help
fix them. Please, do something about this. And in adjusting the atlas, many times their behavior changes. Their posture changes. I believe that in connection with some other work that I'm doing could actually be the beginning of scoliosis. And if we can get to the children early enough, we may be able to stop a scoliotic event from occurring. and you see, so there's many different things that are affected by adjusting the atlas.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
One of the things you said to me was, Badeish, don't let anyone ever touch your neck without having this x-ray to understand what you're dealing with. And I'm thinking there's only 4 of you in the whole state of Oregon. Why aren't more chiropractors aware of, 1, taking x-rays, and 2, this particular part in chiropractics that's so important? It's so amazing.
Well, Badeish, X-ray has been around since 1895. And when you're dealing with X-rays, there are a lot of practitioners who don't feel that X-rays are necessary. It's a double-edged sword.
Yes.
You know, when you're using ionizing radiation on someone, you're X-raying them, you're putting radiation into them.
Yes.
There are side effects to that. And so many doctors, very, very good doctors, feel that they can palpate or that they can feel the vertebrae
Yeah.
and determine what's going on with your body.
Well, in my case, I got to tell you, I went through something like 10 or 12 years not knowing what was my condition and that I needed this x-ray. So I'm talking about this publicly so that other people understand, especially if they have vertigo, especially if they've got migraines. One of the things that they can do is definitely see a professional like you to at least make sure that, you know, they're in alignment. And that would certainly help.
Well, you know, Badeish, I think that if you're not, in my case, and there are 700 chiropractors in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So in Dr. Kort's case, I feel that if you were my sister, I would not guess on your health.
Right, don't
Okay?
guess.
I don't know what happened in your birth process. You've had a few car wrecks.
No, I haven't had any.
You haven't had any car wrecks.
I
Well,
experienced one when I was a teenager.
You know,
Yeah.
even the little ones can affect us.
Yeah.
You know, even the little ones can affect us. It depends how you're positioned in the car. It depends where you've been hit, how you've been hit, so forth and so on. But we have life. Take my life, for instance. Okay, I don't think I had a troubled birth. I don't really remember it. But
Nobody does, really.
exactly. But when I was 7 years old, I was a ski racer, and I had a bad crash.
Exactly.
And I hurt my neck. And I went to the chiropractor, but he didn't take x-rays. Okay? And then when I was 12, I broke my pelvis in a crash, in a ski racing crash. Well, they took an x-ray, but it wasn't a chiropractor. It was at the
Yes.
hospital.
Yeah.
And then I was adjusted and so forth. And when I was 14, I had a very serious crash skiing, and I broke my back in 4 places. I crushed the vertebrae. I landed on my head at 65 miles an hour, came off of a jump, flipped upside down, and landed on the ground from 12 feet in the air.
You know, you're lucky to be alive.
I know. Well, I think, you know, I think there's a higher power. I think God's
Yeah.
got a reason for me here, and
Yeah.
it's probably to serve and to help people.
Yeah.
But I landed on my head, and I crushed 4 vertebrae in my back. And the chiropractor adjusted me, but didn't take any x-rays. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s that we found out that I had broken my back in 4 places, and I was so mad that I left emergency medicine and went to chiropractic school so that it wouldn't happen.
Well, you know, that's what God works in mysterious ways, and I think you're in a field that is so important for people, especially now, because it's not just about your clinic. It's also the teaching that you're doing around food, and what's happening in the food supply itself is our conversation tonight, because there is definitely something happening in the market and on the farms and all across this nation, maybe even in the world. And let's start off with, first of all, in your opinion, what are the 3 reasons for disease in the body?